People like to talk about their successes, but not their failures. And people like listening to success stories and really don't like listening to failure stories unless they're completely catastrophic. And so this is a problem because if someone has done something that made them successful, the question is how many other people did this same exact thing and did not have that same level of success? And that's called survivorship bias. And so one thing I've thought about when I read self-help and business books is how do they address this? And I was really frustrated by this book, which I think has a lot of good advice, but it didn't really, I felt, address it. And I realized it was kind of addressed implicitly in that most of the advice is assuming you already have a business that is making you money and this is how to refine your process. But if you're not there yet, well, how do you figure out what you should be focusing on? And one thing that really frustrated me is they told the story of Mr. Beast as a success story. They're like, he decided he was going to be the biggest YouTuber on the planet, and he followed this strategy, and he became the biggest YouTuber on the planet. But there can only be one biggest YouTuber on the planet. And how many other people followed basically the same strategy and did not become Mr. Beast? We don't know that. So this strategy that they advise, the 80-20 basically, is if you're already making money, figure out where 80% of your money comes from 20% of your customers and focus on that, and either cut the other customers or pay someone else to deal with it, and sort of similar strategy for life. So I think it's good advice, but I was frustrated by it doesn't really address survivorship bias unless you have a business. So there are 3 other strategies I've noticed that books can actually use to address survivorship bias if you don't have a business yet. And this one actually has all 3, and this is an interesting book for a couple of reasons. This is the first get-rich-quick book I ever read. I would never have considered reading a book like this 2 or 3 years ago, and about a year ago I actually read this one. And it's also kind of ghostwritten. I mean, the writer is on the cover, but there are points where I'm like, I feel like there is stuff that if the Noah Kagan were actually writing this, he would have addressed that just didn't get addressed because of that communication issue. But I still found it really interesting, especially because he actually does all 3 of these strategies that I'm going to talk about. And then I'm going to show you books that focus on different ones. But the 3 strategies in this book are get people to pay you up front before you do anything, make small bets, and actually telling this is the success rate. This is my predicted success rate. And so he does all 3 of these things. Because he also tells you, basically, he argues, if you do this strategy as I describe it, and you do it, you spend 5 weekends doing it, you are pretty much guaranteed to make at least one 6-figure business out of it. And so I am not someone who follows people's instructions exactly. At some point, I'm going to actually want to try this a couple times and see how it goes and talk about it because I have this channel now. But if I didn't have this channel, I would probably not be doing it. I'm only considering doing it because I have this channel and it would be interesting content. But there are 3 different books that address this in different ways. And so this one, which I mentioned liking before, he actually addresses survivorship bias. And he says it's either, I think it's 80% of new businesses fail in the first year, but 75% of businesses using this method succeed. And not even just his exact method, but who think like entrepreneurs in general. So that's a verifiable number. I don't know if it's true or not, but he at least makes a claim that sounds plausible. And so that is like, okay, that is good information. It still means even if I do everything right, there's still a 1 in 4 chance I'll fail, but I can know that going in. And then we have this book, which basically focuses on the getting people to prepay. And he does do a little bit of legwork, but there's another book that I haven't read, Profit First, which sort of the same thing, is you get people to pay you before you do anything. And then this last one, Little Bets, was actually referenced in the $1 Million Weekend. And this is, so I've been trying to do this idea. But one thing is, reading this book, I actually had a bit of what's called the anchoring effect. And so because he was like, well, each of these things should take a weekend, I was basically doing like YouTube videos that took me a weekend to do. More with my other Animal Arts and Crafts channel, which is why that one's on hiatus. But with this channel, I was spending almost a weekend doing that. And I'm like, for a business that could become a 6-figure business, it makes sense to spend a weekend doing that. For a YouTube video, I should be spending under 2 hours, ideally under an hour to make it. I'm still over an hour, but I'm hoping to get there. So I read this book. I still didn't really appreciate the scaling thing. And when I did, that's how I actually started being really productive on this channel, as I went from taking typically about 2 days to make a video to under 2 hours. So anyways, those are the 3 ways that I have found that self-help/business books will address survivorship bias for a new project that you don't already have to figure out what your customers already want, which are get people to prepay, make small bets, or the book will actually tell you this is the survivorship bias. And so I feel like a good business book is going to do at least one of those things. And so if you're reading business books and they don't address survivorship bias, and again, this book I still think had good advice, and it sort of addressed it by if you have a business, but if you don't have one, you're trying to start it, like this is not as useful. And so I think if you're evaluating business books, see how they address survivorship bias. Do they at least have a means of doing it? And those are the strategies I've seen, which I guess it's actually 4 strategies, is if you have a business, you can figure out where 80% of your profits are coming from, or figure out other stuff about what people pay you for. If not, get people to pay you up front, make small bets, or if they actually give you the numbers. So those are the 3 ways I've seen of addressing survivorship bias. There may be other ways I haven't seen, but if a business book doesn't address it in any way, I would say that is a scam. Whereas these books are at least potentially worthwhile. So anyways, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Magpie, and I'll see y'all in the next one.